Forgiveness. It's a complex topic, one that is not often discussed in the workplace or leadership spaces. In today's episode of Fill My Cup, Kim talks with Dr. Tracey Jones about forgiveness and the impact that forgiveness can have for someone else or yourself. This is going to be a great conversation. Welcome to Fill My Cup.
Welcome to our latest episode of Fill My Cup. Today, we are excited to be at Central Penn College in Somerdale, Pennsylvania. And what's really exciting is that we are in the Charles T. Jones Library here at Central Penn. And I am so excited to have his daughter with us, Dr. Tracey Jones, today here at the library. And let me just give you a little bit of background about Tracey. Tracey took a chance on me. I reached out to Tracey a couple years ago and said, I have this idea for a book. I know nothing about writing a book, but I have an idea and I need a book coach. Do you know anybody? And so Tracey, it was a God thing. And Tracey said, I really like your idea. And I am going to coach you and I will also publish it. So there was a lot of pressure then I had to write it because she was on my side. So thank you, Tracey, for taking a chance on this novice person that knew nothing about writing and taking that chance on me. And so we've gotten to be really good friends since then. And so I'm so excited that she's here today to participate in our vlog.
Oh, Kim, thank you. It's a tremendous honor. When you connected, knowing you, knowing your heart, when you get to publish with somebody, you really get to know them. And what a blessing that book has been to so many people. And then to come here to the Central Penn College, to the Charlie Jones Leadership Library is just win, 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 win.
Yeah,
thank you.
Awesome. So thanks, Tracey. And when I reached out to Tracey and asked her to do this, I said, your dad had such an impact in not just this community, but far reaching, and left an amazing legacy, so many books that he published. But what is the one thing that really resonated with you, your dad, when you think of that? And without hesitation, Tracey said forgiveness. And I went, wow. We don't read about that in leadership books. That's not, when we look at qualities of a leader, that's not one of those qualities that is talked about. So this is a great topic for today. And so I'd love for Tracey to share with us about forgiveness. And maybe where we need to start is, what is forgiveness? What does that mean?
Absolutely. Well, when Kim said, when you said, what is the top topic? Coming back 15 years ago, I knew my father, but I left home at 17. I'm a local girl. I went home, so I knew him, but I knew him from a distance. So the past 15 years going through all his material, all his documentation, hearing from people and really getting to know him, not as a teenager that was like, I'm out of South Central PA,
Right.
But to come back and go, wow, I heard these things about him. And one thing that constantly came back is for all the stuff that he went through, and I didn't even really know a lot about his upbringing. His heart, I never would have known the hardship that he endured, the heartache, the constant betrayals, until I got back and I thought, but on the outside, he was so loving and giving and filled with grace. What is this? And of course, I was narrating all the audiobooks that we hadn't had, and I narrated Forgiveness is Tremendous. And I thought, that's where it came from. So forgiveness really is, it's an intentional act. It's something that I don't think that we can do of our own volition. It's grace in action, and it is living out where you realize we live in a fallen world, we live in a selfish world, and it's where you really allow people the grace space and the mercy. You got to have justice and mercy. Without, you can't go all justice or you become very legalistic. You can't go all mercy or you become enabling. But forgiveness is where you look at it and you come to that space in the middle, and it's a biblical concept too. And you just intentionally look at it and say, it is what it is. Here's what I'm going to expect. And here's when I'm going to let go. And God really tells us, when Peter says, well, how many times should we forgive people? He pretty much lets us know it's an unlimited thing. So we love to be forgiven, but we really struggle with giving forgiveness. And so that's really what it is. I will say when you get it and when you give it, you know it. because you get peace. So I don't think it's anything that you can structurally break down and say, there, I did it, I'm done, because we're all human beings and we still pick things up and we still see people and get kind of triggered like, oh, I remember that. It's just a daily thing of, I let that go. Jesus says, I remember your sins no more, as far as the east is from the west. So we intentionally have to do that once we make the decision.
I think for many people, when they look at forgiveness, sometimes they think of it, well, that person's getting off scot-free, or there's no consequences. When you forgive, there's no consequences. And that's not true, because you mentioned the justice and the mercy, that there has to be justice and there has to be mercy. Yes, there are consequences for our actions. And so moving past that, oh, because I've heard people say all the time, I will never forgive you.
Oh, I hear that too.
That's
Well, according to the Bible, you're murdering that person in your heart.
right.
I watch people all the time talking about a dead parent or a dead son. I hate them, I'll never forgive them. Okay, well, that's not hurting them.
Right.
That's hurting you. And Charles really unpacks it. Forgiveness is not forgetting.
Right.
Okay. Jesus doesn't say, hey, it's over, game over. But on the cross, we just had Easter, there was a price that was paid. Okay. So the thing with forgiveness is, a lot of people say, I forgive, but do you really forgive, or do you expect that person to pay a penance to you, an indulgence where they keep coming back and have to make things right? But it's an intentional thing that you have to look at it. It's not forgetting, but I will say this, there are certain things, like a crime is done, or something somebody does that is illegal, or a murder. I'm not saying you just, there are legal ends to take that. But 99% when someone harms you, that's different when someone hurt you. 99% of what we deal with is somebody hurt my feelings, somebody tropped on my ego, I assumed that somebody was trying to offend me. Unoffendable is one of my favorite books by Brian Hansen. And it's all about, look, you don't know what's going on in the other person's heart. You're not God. So stop with the righteous indignation and give people grace. And the other thing is, when we are offended, we talk to everybody about the offense, then the person.
Right. Yeah.
And I tell people, have you gone to that person and just, because 99% of the time they'll go, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. But you go around with a chip on your shoulder and it festers. It's like a cancer. And it's like an apple that's spoiled in the midst of all the other good apples. Then what do they say? One bad apple spoils the bunch.
Right.
You let that little hardness of heart and animosity fester in you. So it only hurts you. Justice happens, if not in this life, definitely, we know, in the next. Nobody gets off out of eternity not answering for the things they've done. So you deal with if you have to take somebody to court, if you have to seek justice through HR, do it. But then let it go.
Right.
You have to let it go, because otherwise it will destroy you. And that person, like I said, you're not the gatekeeper of justice. You're not the arbitrator of it. So in the end, and you have to have peace in that. And that comes from understanding the nature of God and how He hates a lying heart. He hates falsehood.
Sure.
Just like we hate people that make stuff up about us or sue us for false allegations. Guess who else hates that? God hates that. And there will be a reckoning for that. Right. So we got to trust that He's way smarter and better than us, but I can resolve what I resolve, but then I have to let it go. The other thing in Charles's book that I read was, again, with Easter. And again, obviously I'm a very justice person. And if I don't get in the Word, I can't forgive because I'm just very much, some people are coded more on the mercy, like thank God moms are, but I'm more of a justice, they must pay for this. But the one thing he unpacked was, when Christ died on the cross, He died for every sin, past, present, and future.
Right.
From Saddam Hussein to Adolf Hitler, to the worst of the worst, to the awful things that I'm going to do in the future, it's already blotted out. So we need to live like it.
Right.
Otherwise, where is my faith? I can say I read the Bible and I'm a Christian, but that's the one defining act that He came to do. So if He remembers everybody's sin, and we hear this in society, well, let's go back 20 years, 30 years, 200 years ago about all the bad. That's horrible. That's divisive. That's pitting us against each other. I do prison ministry. These gentlemen, they did the crime. They're doing their time. Are we supposed to, when they get out, still say, but no, you did? No, it's done. It's paid for.
Sure.
So we have to recognize that or not. And I tell people, it's your choice to live with the animosity and the hate. But if you do, you're just destroying yourself. So if you want to be at peace, you got to be at peace.
And this goes into the why we do this, right? So what is it? It's not saying, okay, all is forgotten,
Right.
but it's the why we do it. And I look at families who have been torn apart because of not forgiveness. So in my own family, and I this happened before I was born, and I never understood it. My grandfather had a sister, so there were two of them, but they were not on speaking terms. And what I had heard was, I mean, this is crazy to me. What I had heard was that somebody died and they were fighting over property or something.
Yes.
Right? And it's like, wow. And so it went on. So fortunately, I was able to have a relationship with my great aunt. So I met her. But when my grandfather died, no one told her that his sister died until she saw it in the newspaper. And so again, I don't know what the whole story was, but it was over something. And
I know.
how many families,
My
struggle
I
with
went
that?
through that. Well, I have a sister. She knows this, and we share this with people. Where something was said, we didn't really communicate for 8 years. 8 years, and we know better. And I know how that broke my mom's heart.
Yeah.
It was a stupid. And then we're in the end, after she passed, we're like, what are we doing?
Right.
And we still cry and hug about it. But it can happen. You have to let it go. And again, one of the things where somebody, I think it's Shakespeare has one of my favorite quotes, expectation is the source of all heartache. When you learn to not let go of the expectation and so we were both waiting, we were expecting the other person to say we're sorry. Stop it. If you're watching this vlog, the odds are in any given room at any given time, you are the most emotionally mature, grounded, and gracious and intelligent person in the room. Guess what? You be the first one to apologize. It's not about being right. It's about being relational.
Right.
Okay? Because it was just some stupid like this. And even if it was something in the will that was done wrong, settle it with the executor, but your family all of humanity, we're all family. Okay? So we need to get past it and realize you be the first one to, because you're the adult in the room. And I have to just realize that, you know what? They should say they're sorry. There's a lot of things that should happen, but in life aren't going to happen. I'm going to reach out. Even if I got snapped on, I didn't mean it, and I will be the first one to apologize because I know what it costs. And I know that I'm going to be the first. And then the other person, 99% of the time, says, thank you for that. And then because I would rather live at restored peace over some minor. Now, again, if it's something huge and, criminal, I'm not talking about that. But I'm talking about most of the stuff we deal with is with just a misunderstanding. Somebody said something that trampled on your feelings. Let's get over it.
So we have this is a huge issue in the workplace. It is just huge. And from an HR perspective, the conflicts, the majority of the conflicts that we deal with is this exact thing. Somebody said something, and so I can't get over that because they said something. And one of the conversations that I have with HR professionals is we promote a diverse work environment. And that's absolutely, we need to have a diverse work environment. We need people that have different experiences, different backgrounds, different skill sets. You're going to have people that came from different cultures. Different things mean things in different cultures, right? I don't know everybody's culture. And so, yes, I may say something and someone's going to get offended because in their culture, that's offensive. And I'll give you a perfect example. I was doing a training a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about cultural barriers in the workplace. And in this room, there were some people from Jamaica. And they said, in Jamaica, when somebody is upset, we just walk up to them and say, hush, hush. And that is a comfort. Like in the South, they say, bless your heart. Yeah. It's a comfort thing. But people in the United States they think you're telling me to shut up.
You're diminishing or marginalizing you.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then you get people that are all offended and they're running to HR and all of this.
Yep.
Instead of having a conversation and saying, that was really offensive to me. Are you, and then they can say, well, in my culture, this is what it means. Oh, okay. Now, but we don't do that. We don't have those conversations. Somebody says something, I get offended, I run to HR.
Right.
I run to my manager. I'm not talking to that person because they said this to me.
I run to the press.
Yeah.
I run to TikTok. It's like, oh,
Right.
stop. Well, the Bible's really clear in that. You go to the person first.
Right.
Then, if there's no restoration, you get one or two other witnesses to go. Then, if it's still not resolved, then you break ties. And that's absolutely, and there are 4 steps to an apology. It's not just saying you're sorry. You have to explain to them how it happened, why it happened. Like, I'm sorry, my schedule, I just have too much on my plate. I'm going to hire a VA, a virtual assistant, to help me because I don't want to leave you hanging again. Sure. And then you have to have some kind of restoration, which means I have to recognize your time. Next time, could I take you out to dinner? You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
You have to, restorative justice, you have to let them know, I know I cost you something. And here's how, that is true restoration.
Sure.
But I love it. Jesus doesn't say, blessed are the peacekeepers. Like I was in the military, the UN, peacekeeping, nonsense. You just sit there and make sure people don't shoot each other.
Right.
That's like telling your kids, just go to your separate corners. But the minute you turn your back, or vicious talk, that there is no peacekeeping.
Right.
Jesus says, blessed are the peacemakers. And that means you have to be the adult, you have to be intentional, you have to own it, even all of it. Jesus owned everybody's sin. Did he sin? No, but he owned everything. Throughout all of, from Cain and Abel to the person that does the last, to the Antichrist, okay? I mean, not that he's forgiven, but I mean, what I'm saying? But own all this sin. So we have to realize restoration has to be done. We have to follow the examples and, or not. I tell people, you have free will. But I think it was Dave Ramsey, he's a dear friend of ours. I think in his organization or somebody's organization, they say, if you have an issue with somebody, and you use the chain, you go up to somebody other than that person. And the first question is, have you had the discussion with them? If they say no, you're out. You're terminated.
Oh my goodness.
Because you are contributing to he said, she said,
right.
to innuendo. Resolve it like an adult. Forget Jesus. Just act like a functioning adult. Resolve it at the lowest level. And 99% of that, like you said at HR, it's like we're adult babysitters because you don't, as an adult, haven't learned conflict resolution and just go to the person. And then maybe they did say something stupid. Guess what? We're stupid by nature. Forgive them. I mean, I just can't understand people that just say, well, I'll never let it go. All right, then you're going to go to your deathbed, never letting go that somebody made a mistake and said something stupid. Good for you. But that's a horrible way to live. And by the way, there's going to be many times in your life where you're going to need forgiveness. You don't give it, guess what? The Bible says, and you're not going to get it.
Yeah.
So,
I think you bring up a great point about conflict resolution. I'll hear people say all the time, I avoid conflict. You can't avoid conflict. You absolutely cannot avoid conflict. You're in conflict with your alarm clock in the morning, right? I mean, you're in conflict when you get in your car and you drive. You cannot avoid conflict. You have to learn how to manage it. And we just don't. And social media has made it worse.
Oh, why do you think everybody's on meds and in therapy?
Right.
And there's a greater awareness. No, there's not. There's a greater sickness because people are feeding into all this stuff.
Right.
And the other thing is talking about forgiveness. Let's talk about self-forgiveness. Why are there people in therapy for 40, 50, 60 years? Because they won't even forgive themselves. We got to forgive others, but the most struggles that we have, the person that we're hardest on is ourselves. And when you don't give yourself grace, you can't give other people grace. And oftentimes that is the root. It doesn't come out, that anger. Remember the saying, hurt people hurt people.
Right.
And they're not really upset with you. They've got something going on and they haven't accepted the grace and just forgiven themselves. And then you can't. And that's why I think the world is so hostile today, because people are at war with themselves and they hate their own selves. And there just slashing out at other people. Very unhealthy.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We are the hardest on ourselves a lot of times. Like, oh, I can't believe I did that, and then we don't get over it, and we tell ourselves. I mean, so the vlogs that I've been doing has been about mindset. I've been, for whatever reason, God has put this on my heart that we need to focus on our mindset, and we need to understand, and we need to change that perspective. And so recognizing that I am. I'm not perfect and I'm going to make mistakes and it's okay. But the big part of leadership is to be able to admit that
Oh, gosh,
and
yes.
say, I made a mistake, because then that gives people around you the freedom to do that as well. Because when they see their leader doing that, then they're like, okay, I can do that. Otherwise, you're in organizations where everybody's pointing the finger and blaming everybody else instead of saying, I'm at fault. This is the mistake I made, and it's a safe environment to do that. But we're in this like, nope, it's always someone else's fault. We're always pointing the fingers. We're
Look at the
blaming.
media. Look at politicians. Nobody has any shame or I mean, it's like, look what you just did. That. Well, I'm going to sue. And it's like, oh my goodness. The 4 steps to an apology. Again, I have a blog on that. But the first thing is you have to own it.
Sure.
And I tell leaders, when you make a mistake, you can come back 1,000 times stronger if you own it and seek restoration.
Right.
Because sometimes leaders are like, well, I can't admit. Well, you better, because it's going to come out. Nothing's hidden. It's going to come out. But number 2, if you do it well, people will have so much respect and so much admiration for you because they realize you're just human and you own it. And so that's why I really tell leaders, you really have to go ahead and learn how to do this and do it well.
Yeah, yeah. In leading people, I've had situations where I've, maybe asked somebody to do something and it didn't get done the way that I thought I instructed. And I'm always the first person to say to them, okay, that's on me. I didn't communicate well. So let's talk about that. And I think that shows a lot. Or if you're dealing with a customer, and they're upset about something, I always would say, and if it's somebody else on my team that did it, I'm like, oh, we really dropped the ball on that. I'm sorry. I'm not going to throw one of my team members under the bus. And I had that happen to me. I had somebody that threw me under the bus with a customer, with a client. And I called him up on the phone. I mean, I called him out and I said, we talked about it, and he just denied. And, there's not a whole lot you can do with that. But I called him out. I mean, he probably wouldn't do it again. But I called him out on it and I said, why did you do this? Why didn't you talk to me about this? Or, no, I didn't do that.
Well, you brought up another good point. When you're seeking forgiveness and when you've extended the olive branch, most people are going to be like, thank you, I'm sorry, I didn't know. But you are going to have a certain element like that like, what are you talking about? You said your piece, you don't have to have any. Write the Bible. 1, 2, 3 steps, we're done. So those kind of people, you need to realize you are healthy, restored, consider it done. Shake the dust off your sandals and don't have anything to do with them again. And I tell people, you don't keep coming back. Are you ready to say you're sorry now? Why can't we be the way we were? You may never get to where you were.
Right.
That you may not get to restoration, because restoration is a dance. It takes 2.
Right.
So if they're not going to own it and they're not going to say, come back in, or at least warm up to you and you can see the proof in the pudding that they understand, don't keep going back. That's on them. And you've done everything you can and say, well, it'll never be the way it was, but that's okay. You've done your part and you let God work on their heart. Who knows? Some people, it takes a lifetime before they finally go, what an idiot I've been. And, well, I've had people call back years later and say, remember this? And I'm like, not really, because God kind of lets my brain, I thank God. That's the other thing. Pray, ask God, say, hey, can you just, like a loop, like a security camera, after like 2 days, let's just erase it. I don't really remember the past hurt. Somebody will be like, well, do you remember this? Or somebody will say, hey, I remember back 15 years ago. And I'm like, well, thank you for saying that. And I don't remember. And I'm so thankful. And that's not me living in la la land. That's just me being at peace. I put it to bed. And I'm not going to go back and pick at the wound again.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
And after a while, guess what? If you don't keep running that synapse through your brain, you talk about mindset. That's where it all starts. Not your heart, not your emotions, not your feelings. Head, heart, habits, hands. Everything starts up here.
That's right.
And we are functioning adults. We have this beautiful frontal lobal cortex. We're not dogs, animals. We're not reactionary creatures. We're not impulse controlled. We have a conscience. We have a sentience, and we can control our minds. And then that regulates the emotions. And forgiveness is a choice.
Yeah. And I think, when I think about it, what prevents us from actually going forward and forgiving, I think pride.
Absolutely.
Pride.
Anger, pride. And they always say, anger is one letter from danger. It's pride. It's hurt. But again, hurt, shame, anger, those are all self-imposed emotions.
Sure.
When I'm still angry at somebody that died, that's on me.
Right.
Even alive, go speak to them. Let them know how you feel. Say your piece and then gain your peace. Don't say your piece and then keep going back, because again, that's a penance. Well, I expect you to, that's what they teach in marital counseling. You got to let it go if somebody let you down or not. Divorce. But if you're going back in, you got to go back in and truly forgive them the way God forgives us. But I think people say, I can't do it. Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. It's hard as heck. But that we have all kind of wonderful books and blogs and podcasts, and nobody, like I said, my father, how he got over, I have the utmost respect for him, not because he was a big motivator and a big speaker, but when I look at what he grew up with and the abuse and the horrific things that happened to him and how he still forgave his parents.
Yeah.
If he could do it. Yeah. That's why he was like, no thumb sucking, because he knew the power of forgiveness. He also knew the horrific things that people were capable of, but he chose to love them anyways. So,
yeah,
it's a choice.
That's amazing. It's amazing. So, all right. Well, Tracey, it has been great to have you here and just touch the surface of forgiveness. I mean, there is so much to unpack with this, and I really hope that people will, how can they get this book on forgiveness?
Absolutely. Just come to tremendousleadership.com. You can get an ebook, physical copies, or Amazon, whichever, and audiobook. I read it, and that's where it really just impacted me.
Yeah.
Tremendous Leadership or Amazon.
Yeah, awesome. So I hope that you'll get that book and really consider the importance of forgiveness. Well, thank you so much for tuning in today. And if you liked our vlog, please like and share, subscribe to YouTube. Our intent every month is to bring something to you as a leader that will help to fill your cup. And so if you know of a coffee shop or a location that would be a great place for our vlog, please give me a shout out and I will connect. But in the meantime, please keep filling your cup, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.
Fill My Cup is a joint production of Thrive LLC and Kelly Johnson Photography. Kim's book, Burn the Plow, can be purchased through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Books A Million.